All right, what's up, everybody? We are back again. It's episode 6. Was that the right number? Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Last week we talked about the Pray Away documentary on Netflix, and we decided this week we would talk some about our own personal coming out stories and kind of relate them back in with that and how vulnerability is still involved with it. But yeah.
Well, with you saying that, it's just me sitting here and I'm picturing myself like as the little kid I was, and like I would go to the swimming pool with my shirt off. Like I would.
Oh, really?
I wore like the boyiest of boy. Like I was seriously a tomboy. And even what's more crazy is I told people in kindergarten, like I was like, yeah, I'm a boy. I told everyone I'm a boy. I wanted to be a boy like so bad to where even being that young, I was probably like 5 or 6. Looking back on pictures. So the way that my mind works is I have a very vivid memory of whenever I was a kid. And if I see a picture, I can actually imagine myself there in that moment. And I just remember me being the little shit that I was. But I tell you what, I thought that I was a stud. Like, I really thought I was. And if you look at my pictures, I had short hair. Like, I had it cut off, like, with the little curls. And that's kind of where I look back and I'm like, damn. But then I'm like, did I even struggle, like, with myself whenever I was even younger, you know? I definitely love who I am now. But I look back and I'm like, I told people I was a little boy. I went to the pool telling people I was a little boy. Like, and then ironically, my name is Christian. So it definitely fit well. But my parents, because in the last episode I talked about it, and I was like, it's crazy that my parents didn't put 2 and 2 together of me being gay, because I came out the womb like looking gay for sure.
Yeah. How old were you when you came out to them?
So I did not actually come out until my sophomore year of high school. It was definitely a struggle. It was having like boyfriends and stuff. And like,
oh, I remember that part. I remember some of that now. That's a funny thought.
Like figuring out and like kissing my boyfriend at the bus stop. And me and the guy were like really good friends now. He was off and on like my boyfriend through middle school and all that. And we joke about it now because he's like, am I the reason you're gay? And I'm like, seriously, just stop right there. But no, I don't know that. I think I knew at a young age, but it was definitely from my background and everything. It was definitely harder for me to like accept and come to terms to. And I mean, a little bit about my dad, what I talked to in the last episode, he just wasn't, it was something where I had to have the right time in the right place for that conversation. And even then it wasn't right, but I definitely knew from a very, very young age for sure.
I think you had it figured out a good bit before I did.
Oh.
On the timeline.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure.
I was more like, here's the thing. The first memory I have where I think I can kind of piece it together. And I know that you and Morgan both know that I'm going to say this. I just liked Hillary Duff a little too much.
So, yeah.
And it's so funny. I'm like, that's who I latched on to. I don't know. And I wish I had looked up before this when that show started and came on. But I guess it would have been like 2001 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then I mentioned it a couple episodes ago. There was one girl when I was in 5th grade that I also liked a little too much.
Yeah.
Named Stacy.
Oh, yeah. We did talk about that. Yeah, I had my neighbor. Her name was Mackenzie. And we would like,
I had a neighbor
we
named
actually
Mackenzie.
kissed. We actually kissed and everything. Like it was crazy. But she actually knew I was a girl. She was one of the girls I didn't tell that I was a little boy because we were like childhood best friends. Me, her, and her little brother, we would like ride our bikes together and everything. But she had bunk beds. And we would like kiss. I mean, you're so young. So like, but we would kiss on the bunk bed and be like, giggle afterwards. Like, but also you said Hillary Duff was your childhood crush. Do you remember, did you watch Zach and Cody?
Yes.
Do you remember Max? Whenever Max was breaking out in that with the basketball, she was the only girl who was playing basketball. Ironically, she is LGBTQ now, but that was my...
Oh, wait. Isn't Max... Isn't she... Did Allison Stoner... Was Allison Stoner Max?
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay,
That was my first... I would say that was like my first same age kind of. I mean, she is a couple of years older than me, but that was like my first kind of girl crush on TV. And then also Sabrina Bryan off of Cheetah Girls, the blonde.
Oh, I think I did that too.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, it's just funny to look back on those moments because it's like, I never really thought of boy. I mean, I always thought Zac Efron was like cute during High School Musical, but
I don't know that I had that thought.
Well, then that makes it more embarrassing. I guess then I was still figuring myself out.
I don't know. I mean, I can admit when a guy is attractive.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. Like he's a very handsome gentleman.
I guess maybe at that time I thought so. I don't know. I think I just recently saw a thing from High School Musical, and now I just look back at it. I'm like, oh,
well, like you didn't think like
time.
Guys like back then, like you didn't think. I think it was my friends, Alexa, and I hope that she listens to this, but my little friend group was boy crazy. And I was like, oh, let me fit in and because I can't just be like, yeah, Sabrina Bryan on Cheetah Girls is fucking hot. Like they would be like, you're insane. What are you talking about? Because, so I guess it was just trying to like fit in and be part of the little, sleepovers whenever you would stay over and talk.
I had a little bit of trying to fit in to a point where... Now, the interesting thing, you graduated in what year?
2017.
Wow, that was more recent than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
Wow. Anyways, mine's 2010.
Okay, I was 11.
High school, like the last High School Musical movie came out like the summer after I graduated high school, or like at the end.
So like you were older than the people in High School Musical, right?
I was like... The first movie came out when I was a freshman.
Okay, so kind of...
So I was like the age they were supposed to be. But anyways. So, I mean, the main thing is I'm like, there was no gay marriage at that time.
Oh, yeah. No.
It was back a bit further at that point in time. And all of my close friends were... girls that I grew up going to church with. And there was a couple of them who talk about guys a lot. But I remember one time, my best friend Molly, there was this guy she had been friends with that I don't remember how it happened, but he kind of liked me and had met me once. So she got him to come and we hung out at a football game. He was my boyfriend for like a straight month. I never kissed him. I like hugged him a few times. Like every day after school, I would literally dread it because I was like, he's going to be waiting and he's going to do the bear hug thing and lift me off the ground. And I'm not about it. And what's really funny is it was junior year and we had like this ending event at school every year that was like a field day thing.
Yeah.
And my friends were laughing because he would be walking with us and they would watch him like go like to put his arm around me. And I would speed up every single time.
I can just imagine you right now.
Oh man, it was something. Oh man. Anyways, that's as close to entertaining as I ever got.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's pretty... I think my boy... I think really I was trying to be boy crazy. And whenever I say boy crazy, I'm saying like literally from 7th grade to like freshman year. Because freshman year, there was this girl in my class that like definitely was like, Oh my gosh. I think she is absolutely like, little girl crush for sure. And that's what really sparked it. But I literally shoved that crush down so far because no one knew, like, no one knew anything at that time. But I look back on it, and a little bit about my coming out, it was, here's the thing. I didn't think it through. I really didn't, because I wasn't even worried necessarily about my dad finding out. I was worried about my friends finding out and then like them not accepting me for who I was. I was like, oh, I'm going to lose all my friends. Like, and at the time, if you ask someone from my hometown and you ask them how we grew up, they would tell you that we were hood rats. Like, I had more guy friends than girlfriends. So the only 4 girlfriends that I was extremely close with was Alexa, Arian, Katie, and then myself. Like, we were the 4 people, and then all we had was guy friends. And it's like, names get, because you hang out with guys more than you do girls. Like, but regardless, there was this guy, his name, I don't even care if you know his fucking name. His name's Elijah, and he confessed his like feelings for me. And this was sophomore year. We just had gotten our license. It was summer. Like, we were sophomore going into junior. And he confessed his feelings for me. And I kind of was like, okay, let me use him as a cover up. So I met this girl on Twitter. Her name, also, give us a name. Tisha. I met this girl on Twitter. Her name is Tisha. And we started talking, and like, it was kind of like a good feeling. Like, it was like I felt like I was able to be myself around someone, that part that I was hiding. And so me and her like continued to talk on and on. And finally, like, these feelings came about that I've never had. Like, I've never felt. I mean, even dating, like, whenever I had my one boyfriend through middle school, like, off and on, like, nothing like that. Like, I didn't feel, and I still consider myself, I was like 16. So like, that's still kind of young. So these feelings that were going about, I was like, oh my gosh. And the hardest thing is I didn't necessarily have anyone to talk to, because I didn't tell anyone about my situation. And so we started FaceTiming every night. And to the point where me and my friends, again, we were hood rats. We were going TPing, ding dong ditching, pool hopping. Like, we were doing the whole 9 yards. And all of a sudden, like, I'm not doing that anymore. And my friends are like, what's up? But my girlfriends, like Alexa, Arian, and Katie, they still came over and everything. And I introduced them to Tisha and everything. And they were like, oh, hi. Like, but I never told them who she was with me. And finally, me and Tisha got more and more serious. And we started like a relationship. And so, remember I said Elijah, during all of that, I still had Elijah in the picture. And I was kind of like bringing him along, and he had no idea about Tisha, but I was using it as, again, like a cover up. And so one day we are about to go to Crybaby Bridge, and I get the girls in the room, and I start crying a little bit, and I'm like, so Tisha is actually my girlfriend, and we're going to this river thing with Elijah, and I don't know what to do, and I'm crying because I don't think you guys will accept me. And like, it was all this emotional roller coaster, and they were like, we already knew.
That's how it goes.
Yeah. And so after telling them, of course, they supported me from that day on. Like, I never had any problems. And then one of the girls, not any of those 3, but one of the girls ran their mouth to Elijah. And so Elijah kept it in all day while we were like, he didn't say anything. And then we get back to my house, and I can tell like he's upset about something. And at that time, like, my 8th grade teacher told me I was going to grow up to be a bitch and no one was going to like me. So at that time, I didn't give a fuck what was right in front of me. I asked him what the problem was. And it's like everyone, a room full of fucking people, and there's an elephant in the room, and it's so awkward. And it's just like, what the fuck? And at this point, I'm upset, I'm frustrated, I'm flustered because I'm sick and tired of hiding myself at this point. And he was upset because I was dragging him along, and he's like, where are my feelings in this? But long story short, I had to come out to all of those people. It was very, very uncomfortable because there's a difference between coming out to people that you love and care about that are your really close friends versus kind of people that you're just hanging out with. Coming out is definitely hard, and our small town, our small school, like I knew that someone in that room was going to run their mouth about me. And so, of course, one of my guy friends, he was like, like we'll always love and support you. But we also like kind of had a feeling and yada, yada, yada. But Elijah, like from that day on, like he always told everyone that I did break his heart, and he was invested and I wasn't. And so I can't tell you how his feelings were and how they were developed. But like for a man, I wasn't there. And I feel like whenever you go through that, I think kind of I was trying to have those feelings with him. I mean, it was the same. We never really like kissed. I am a gold star lesbian, never had sex with a man. But as much as I kind of like we vibed and we were really good friends, it's just that sexual connection and like who I was as a person wasn't there. And then me and
I'll bleep it.
Okay. And then me and Tisha, we actually dated for 10 months and we never saw each other. And you want to know the ironic thing now?
The gayest thing.
Well, she cheated on me, but we're past that. She cheated on me with someone she told me not to worry about, but also we were 16 and like we never met in person. But she will actually be in Nashville at the end of August, and we are going to meet for the first time, like face to face since like, just imagine, you know how crazy that is? But that is a little bit of, that's my coming out story with my friends. Now my coming out story with my dad, it's a little different, and I can get into that like a little bit more, but I first like want to hear how yours was.
Yeah, mine was kind of in stages too, like that.
I mean, I feel like it is. It just happens.
Mine was drawn out in that, as I talked about a little bit on the last episode, I was like I was at church all of the time.
Yeah.
So, and I pretty much all of the friends that I was around a whole lot were also people from that church. I didn't really have a lot outside of that. I had Chloe, which was my best friend who had been here as an exchange student but lived back in Australia and had, now I'm realizing it's been 10 years since she's been here. But anyway, so that's just nuts. Anyways, what is time? But I was at church all the time in the sense of like, I was so deep in that stuff that, I was getting to church on Sunday at like 7:30 in the morning. We'd practice, then there'd be service. I wouldn't get home until maybe like 1. And then if it was like a Sunday night, we had a youth thing. I was over worship for that. So I was there at like 4 or 5 o'clock for that to do practice and then do that again. And then I was also over worship on Wednesdays. And then I was also in another band that we practiced at that church too. And so the main thing is I was so deep in it that I was like, I can't face the music. The whole time I know what's going on inside, but I'm like, I can't open that door.
Yeah.
And then as we know, I also had that fear of, I referenced my mom some on the last episode too, but she is the oldest known living survivor of a rare heart defect. And I was convinced if she found out, she would like roll over and die of a stroke. Mm-hmm. So with all that, I just stuffed it way down there, didn't acknowledge anything. And the first time I told anyone, I wish I could understand why my brain picked this night. But I'd went with, some church friends to go see, dang it. What's that movie? This would have been like 2012 and like 2012, 2013. And some stars in it. Like
Fault in Our Stars.
Fault in Our Stars. That's right. So I'd gone to see Fault in Our Stars. And I don't remember what all was going on at this time. But I'm driving back home. And I am bawling and am like losing it in that car on the way home. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that movie triggered in me because that's not really who watches Fault in Our Stars goes, I think I need to come out now. But that's apparently what my mind did. And so I got home and I sent Chloe some long Facebook message. And I don't remember, I could probably find it and go back over it now. But I don't remember what all she said, but I'm pretty sure that the gist of it was just like, yeah, I had a feeling that this was going on like the whole time.
Yeah.
And then after that, maybe that was in the summer, I told Faith about a few months later. And I think with her, it was just like, we had just started talking and stuff a lot. Also, all of my coming out now in the beginning, I realized happened over Facebook Messenger. That's just what I noticed. But like, we would talk a lot and we would send these lengthy messages. And so I told her as well. And then, and that went well. And then I started visiting her in Mississippi somewhere between 3-4 times a year. And from the time I told Chloe to the time I told my mom was at least a year, maybe 2.
Damn.
I don't remember, but I know that I was 23 when I made the next step, which was, the bigger parental one. Mm-hmm. And that was also done on none other than Facebook Messenger. But it was really funny because I had always told myself, I was like, I'm going to wait and tell my parents after I graduate college. Then I graduated college. I was like, I don't really, now I'm going to wait till I move out. And then like, there's just never a good time. And so I was doing that game. And I had always told myself that whenever I did it, I should do it while I'm in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. Because Faith's family was real supportive. And, that's another one that I forgot is Faith's mom, Mandy. There was one night, it was really interesting in that it was the first trip I ever went down there. And I came out to Faith's sister, Leah. And then it was the last night of the trip and we were up talking late. And there was this deal going on where their dad's friend was in town. And Mandy's mom, Faith's grandmother, had said that she didn't want Ace to come over to her house because he was gay, basically. And so Mandy, on that very last night, was on one about it. And talking like she, about, I don't remember what all she was saying, but she was in defense of Ace for sure. And I just, oh boy, that's probably about one of the more emotional moments I've had in life because I was like, she was talking and I like looked at Faith and I was like, is it okay to say it? And so I told Mandy, and boy, I tell you what, we didn't go to bed till 6:30 a.m. that night.
Dang.
Boy, she was just giving me all kinds of talking.
Yeah.
And, but when I told my mom, I was also down there. But it was really funny because I had no plans to. I literally just woke up and I went, Faith, I'm going to do it today. And she told me later that she thought I was just going to say that. And I was like working myself up, but it wasn't going to happen yet.
Yeah.
And that night we went to her sister's house. And I was like, her sister has no idea what I'm doing. I'm like in there drafting up this like crafted message.
Yeah.
And which a lot of people I say I did it on Messenger and they're like, they find that like to be not cool. But I was like, I cannot speak like a normal person when I'm upset. So it's just not happening.
No, yeah.
And so I was like, it just has to be typed out. And this is the method that we're going to go with.
I mean, at that time, and even like now, if that's the best way for you to handle it, then that's, no one can really speak on how you handle situations.
Yeah.
So.
And I didn't know how ballistic my mom was going to, I didn't know how that was going to go. Because, I grew up with hearing all kinds of, I'm not going to say all kinds of comments, but like my dad's brother is gay. And it's like, when my mom gave me the sex talk, I still, maybe one day I'll ask her why this was relevant, but I probably never will.
Yeah.
She's giving me the sex talk. I'm in 6th grade and she's just like,
what?
Telling me some stuff. She didn't get into the like safety things and like, what it really is or anything.
Yeah.
I just got like the abstinence spill. And then she's like, now your uncle, he's gay. And I'm like, I don't know why that was shared with me in that random moment. But like, there's just always been those kinds of, things. And I knew she wasn't down with it. And, but when I came out to her, I just gave her this long thing about how she didn't really affect anything. It just is what it is. And I don't remember what all I said, but at first it didn't go bad. It showed that she read it, but I didn't hear from her for like almost 30 minutes. Oh my God, longest 30 minutes of my entire life.
Even 5 minutes then would feel like forever. So I couldn't imagine a 30.
Yeah.
How'd she respond though?
She called me. So I took the call. And at first she was very much like, oh, things are going to look a little different than we thought, but it's going to be okay. And I still love you, that kind of thing. Like I was like, oh, this is going well.
Yeah.
It went better than I thought. And then what was crazy was the next day was going to be when I went home and I was going to fly home.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, I was so horrified to go back home. The good Lord above had a storm come that night and canceled that flight. I went, thank you, Lord. So I was like bawling on the couch leading up to leaving to go to the airport. It's like, I don't want to go. And then, anyways, I was like, oh, God is real, apparently. He's let me stay another day.
Yeah.
And then I got home. And what was interesting is I never had the, talk with my dad.
Yeah.
But he picks me up from the airport and he's like, eventually I'm like, I'm going to go with Mom told you. And he's like, yeah, I wish you would have gave me a heads up. And I said, well, he said I would have helped you find a good time. And I said, well, when would a good time have been? And he said, never. And I think I talked about this last week where I also said that he joked that before I went out of town that I was cleaning my closet and he was also going to be like,
yeah,
are you going to come out of that?
Yeah.
And so he was always pretty chill with it. He admitted he's not really cool with it, but it's whatever. And how my mom was mad that he wasn't mad. And which again, he said he's always known. So how could he be mad about it? And he was like, your mom though has just somehow shut that entire possibility out. And so I got home. My mom was already asleep. I lived with them at the time. And the next morning, I remember I woke up to a text from a friend of mine that I also went to church with, who was also secretly gay at the time. And was like, it had some rainbows. And so I'm like, we did it. And I'm like, what is this? So I had to face my mom on the morning that gay marriage was legalized. And I was like, I feel like this added a lot to it that I didn't need today.
Yeah.
But so I went in there and she was just very quiet and stuff. And I could sense that it was not like it was on the phone call. And I went to work and I got home later and we were in the living room and I could tell that it was a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I think my mind has like blocked out a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because I really don't remember everything that was said. It's not like she was raging, yelling at me, but like, just a lot of not fun stuff was going on. I just remember her being like, she said that, you know, at first she had one reaction, but then when she heard my footsteps that morning, it made her sad or something like that. And I just remember her saying something about like, you know, how she's afraid. And she's like, what if this means, you know, what if this does mean you go to hell? And it was that kind of stuff. And I was just like, oh no. And she also like, I think she also for a little bit blamed my friend's family in Mississippi for like, because they were kind of like progressive kind of Christianity kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think they, you know, my mom kind of saw them as like they helped change me into something else. I'm like, no, they're really just bringing out what's already here.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But that's how that went in the beginning. And like, there was a lot of, it took a long time for her to come around and be better. Like, she eventually was like, if you date someone, I want to know about them. And like, you know, and then when I dated, when I had my first real girlfriend and she knew about it, she helped bake her a vegan birthday cake for her birthday because she was a vegan and she had never met her. So I was like, so I mean, she came around, but it's like at the beginning, I was trying to recognize that like she thinks she's saying the right things, which doesn't mean you put up with it forever, but like.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of how even I didn't get into like my dad or anything like that and how I came out to him or even my godparents. My godparents were very like, hey, I was very emotional with them. That was the two people that I was very, very emotional with about it because they respected me. Like I respected them. They actually showed me what a mother and father figure look like. And so like having them in my life, I really cared about what they thought, but they were like, hey, we love you. Like, I'm sorry that this is your reaction. Like, which it is an emotional thing, like regardless if it goes well or not, it's coming out and you're scared of today's world, like, and just being denied for that. But my dad was actually kind of the same reaction your mom had in a way. So I came out to my friends my sophomore year, but didn't come out to my dad until like right at the beginning of junior year. So basically when me and Tisha had kind of ended and I was like still figuring myself out to where I was even like, this is it. Like I'm attracted to females. Like if I get into a relationship, like I'm not dating any boy, like I am going to be with a girl. And the hard part is at the time I was the only lesbian at my school as well. And I looked it. I definitely, if there was a part to sign up for, it was fucking mine. I was there. And so finally I was like, you know what? Like maybe this conversation with my dad like would go good. And he came home from the bar and I was in my room and I was like, is this a time? And I'm like, you know what? He's drunk. Maybe we can just have this conversation and like, it can just be like, still like there was two different types of drunk Terrys of my father. There was either the sweet dad and like all that, or the aggressive dad, and not in a physical way, but a very emotional, I would say kind of emotionally abusive way, but still like there was no telling what I was going to get. So I was kind of just seeing how like his dynamic was whenever he walked through that door. And for those of you who don't know what my dad and my relationship was, it was basically like a friendship. I was also a lot of people, even myself looking back, I was a spoiled brat. I was getting whatever I wanted he would get it for me. Like, I was very ungrateful and I was very depressed and I was just very fucking like whatever. So our relationship was not healthy. He told me to do something and I wouldn't fucking do it. I would laugh in his face. Like, that's the kind of relationship we had. It was very negative and unhealthy on both ends. But also, I was a daddy's girl and I lived with him and he was a single father. So I wanted him to know. And he kind of like, at first he was like, he didn't say much and his eyes looked kind of watery, but he didn't. But I honestly thought it was best in that moment that he didn't say anything to me. So I gave it some time. And then that's whenever he came to me and he was like, you're going to have to take that up with God. Absolutely. I love you as my daughter, but it's hard for me to do that as a daughter who's a lesbian and all this other stuff. And ironically, my cousin, who is his niece, is also LGBTQ. She is a lesbian and she always brought her friend around and he like was sweet to them. Like, he acted like everything was normal with them and shit. And so I guess, of course, with me being his daughter, his little girl, like, that was hard for him to accept. And I get it as well. I think it's just as hard for a parent who is so close-minded in that aspect for someone who has an only child or who even has like siblings. Regardless, like, they're still going to react in a way, especially if they're like in the unknown of what it is. And then finally he left. Like, so he worked in Indiana and he left for like 2 weeks to where we weren't talking. And I was only 16 going like on 17 years old. And it kind of put me in a damper because at that time, like, all I had was my friends, but also my friends had parents that like made them come home at a decent time, like had a structure, like had rules. And like, I was known as the girl who had the cool dad to the kids, but to the parents, the very unstable dad that lets his child get away with everything and throws parties, yada, 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 lets his child throw parties. And I hope all of you people listening to me, I know half of you judged me through high school, but y'all are all having a grand old time now, drinking and shit. Anyways, that's a whole nother thing. But like I said, things get around in a small town. My name was going around places. It kind of affected me on a whole different level. And that's whenever I would say between 16 and 17, 15, I was still kind of figuring myself out. But 16 and 17, that's whenever depression came in the picture. And I wouldn't blame my father for that. I think regardless of however his reaction was, I feel as though I was just locked up and so felt so alone that it was going to happen regardless. And because of that, and the things that were being said of me and the shit that I was going through and just not having a mom figure like all my friends did, because yes, I still had my mom in my life, but also, again, substance abuse has been around. And it took a big toll to where I questioned. I did question my life. I did question my worthiness. I was harming. I was doing all the things that I don't want to see anyone ever go through. And it sucks because in those moments of things where you really don't feel like anyone understands, like, people can say all the fucking time, I understand what you're going through, or I'm here for you. Like, it'll be okay. Like, once your head and everything is going through all that, especially at a time of like coming out, you just get to a point where you're like, holy fuck, I can't take this anymore. And that's kind of where it led me to. I am, of course, lucky to be here today, but my coming out was terrible. My town was terrible. My background with my family was terrible. I wouldn't wish anything like that on my worst enemy. And I think that if I wouldn't have found Nashville, then I don't know if I would be right by you today.
Oh, yeah, because you came here when you were...
Oh, yeah.
19.
19, yeah. No, 18. Well,
Oh,
I was...
so you were just out of high school, basically.
Just out of high school, yeah. And it just...
Oh, you found all the gays here?
Fuck yeah, I did. I love the gays. I do love the gays.
You landed smack dab in it. You really did.
Dude, whenever I came around everyone in the group, I was like, I've never been around anything like this in my life. Like, holy
that
fuck.
That was me too.
I was kind of fangirling in a way. Like, I was like, damn, this is dope.
Yeah. I ended up in... It was like culture shock for me too when I got around that bunch because like... Well,
definitely for you.
Oh, how I even got there is like, it was like a step program. It was like a multi-step situation because like I was going to that church of mine that I grew up in and like leading worship and all this stuff. And then I met two friends of mine, Julian and Maddie, who were going to an Episcopal church.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time they were talking to me about how there was this like pumpkin fest day or something. And one of them was like, Faith, you got to check it out. Like, I looked around and I realized it's a bunch of lesbians putting on this pumpkin fest at a church. And I said, I'm going to come visit. So I ended up going to visit one week. And the pastor, or I don't remember what they call it in Episcopal, but like who they had was like if you had Tina Fey and you had Ellen DeGeneres and you made them one person and you said, be a minister. It was perfect.
Really?
I mean, there was like a night service one time. She dropped an F-bomb and I remember being like, this is different.
Yeah.
This is different. And it was so crazy because like that was my first step into like the gays in the sense of it's this little Episcopal church, maybe like 70 people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because you go in and I came from a church that was like Hillsong music and stuff, like full band. Like we were still pretty small, but like I go into this and it's like we've got our hymn book and we've got a piano player and we kind of got a choir up here. And there's like this whole order and there's like two books you go between. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I remember Julian was like, man, when I came in here, I'm going to lead the way because like when I came in here, I was alone and it was different. And so it was culture shock in a way, but it was great. And I stayed because it was like that church was like 75% old people, a couple random kids, and then everyone else, like a solid 20%, was the gays. Mainly younger, too. There was like a married couple and such, too. And like the piano player was gay as well.
I'm surprised you said old people were there.
Yeah, it was interesting. Well, the history of this place was that when the Episcopal Church decided that they were going to affirm gay marriage, there was a church split. And this was the part that was like, we're going to affirm it. And the other part went to another church in town.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it was still crazy to me. And so eventually, like over time, I was like, I'm going to switch. And I remember I was going there like once a month. And then I was still like playing every week at where I grew up. And one story I felt like deserved an interesting tale was like the last time I was at a service there, like the service that I decided I was going to leave, rather. It was like a Christmas service, and there was a politician named Mark who was a state rep guy in the Capitol, and he was one of the two that were trying to overturn the gay marriage ruling for Tennessee. So basically their argument was Tennessee literally voted on it themselves in the past and they voted no. So the federal government cannot say, hey, no, now it's legal. They're saying you can't trump the state vote. Something like that. Anyways, he was in the news a lot at the time because of this. And he's tried to bring the bill back 2 or 3 times since, but he walked in late and he was like, our pastor was like, oh, I want to make sure he comes up here and does communion, because for Christmas they would have families come up one by one. And so he gets up there and he's like, we need to pray for him because like he's really under fire by the media because he's doing what's right, whatever. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, this is an interesting time. And a couple people in the band knew that I was out at the time. And actually the whole band knew at that point. But I don't know how much everyone else knew. And I will never forget, Mark took the mic and he starts talking, and he keeps talking all about how like God told him like this is what he's supposed to do, and how like he's got to help the gays realize that what they're doing is sinful, and he's got to help them repent, and like all this stuff. And how, you know, we can't let the world become so secular and all this stuff. And the whole time, this whole room of people that I grew up going to church with keeps yelling amen and all this stuff. And I texted my friend, I was like, all right, I'm in. I'm coming every week. And I remember she was like, well, I mean, I don't want to steal you from them. I said, don't worry. They're opening that door. They're holding it open right now as I text you this. And so that's when I was like, I'm going to go. And so I gave him a date, and like it was like a couple months later, I was like, after this date, like I'm gone. I'm not going to be gone. I'm going to not play anymore. And I remember looking back, it was really interesting to me because it's like no one tried to stop me. No one asked why I was leaving. Wow. I think it's because they know.
They probably knew, yeah. But
I don't know. It was just interesting to me that they never tried to talk about it. And then I ended up, there was another time I came, I won't get into the story of this, but like I visited later to play one Sunday because like I want to get that part out of my system.
Yeah.
And I visited when the pastor's wife was speaking, who always talks about gay marriage somehow and how bad it is. I ended up sitting front row with a friend of mine who was there because she sat front row, and it was the day of the good old Target bathroom debacle. And so I got to sit through a whole service on the front row while everyone knows I'm out, and her talk about how America's becoming modern day Saddam. I was like, I'm never coming back. And I never went back. I never went back again.
Literally.
But anyway, so that got me into that church. And then that led me into the music scene that I played in. And at that point, I honestly ended up in the big crew because I randomly was like, I'll give Tinder a try. I had no other gay friends outside of that bunch. And in the first 24 hours, I met Sarah. And I just figure I'll use her real name. It's all good. And we talked for a couple months, whatever. And I remember the first night, we hung out before a show, and she was like, we ended up just going to go to the show together too. And she's like, oh, I'm meeting up with my friends at their office. And then that's when I just like met like all of them at once.
Yeah, that's how it went for me too.
And it's so funny because now I look back and I'm like, oh, everyone was there, like all in one swing. And then
it's kind of overwhelming. It's kind of overwhelming, like not overwhelming, but it's like, holy fuck. Because a little bit about me and Faith, I mean, our church background is similar but different. I was the child who didn't listen to their dad whenever I was told, yeah, I'll go to church on Sunday, but I'm not going on Wednesday. I'm not going on Sunday night. Like, you got me here on Sunday. I don't want to go after that. But that was our agreement. I had to go every Sunday. But as for you, like, that's where we kind of were different because I opened up to like the druggies and the kids that smoked cigarettes, like, and all this other shit. And it's because my dad, I think we had that relationship to where whenever he tried to tell me what to do, I wanted to not do it more. I seriously was like, all right, I'm not doing that. Like, you haven't. And for someone, I mean, that's why I think I will be an excellent mother one day. But for someone who has went their life with no guidance from a parent, like no authority or anything telling them the right from wrong and telling them no, like you automatically think you can wake up one day and just give me that. But that's where our church background was very similar, but very different as to like where we hung out after church, like when all that went down. Because I also was in the choir and I also was doing all those other things with the church. But outside of it, if I wasn't in the church, then I was doing bad things. Well, not bad, but
I know what you mean.
At that time of that age. But what I was getting at to that as well is you had mentioned I'll
help you if you give me a hint.
Yeah, well, the last thing that you were talking about, I was talking about how our...
Oh, you were talking about the group's overwhelming at one point.
And getting into that, yes. So with our church background and everything, going into from our church and small town and like what we went through when we were raised and everything, to then going to that big of a group and not seeing that like on the daily and everything.
And then all of a sudden it's like all the gays are here. All of them. Okay.
You would have thought at that time, even though there was like 20 of us, I thought that it was the entire town of Nashville. I was like, holy city. I was like, holy shit, I can't believe. But I think I needed that in my life because Nashville literally like made me do a 180 with my life. I don't know if you remember, but I was dressing like a frat boy. I was literally
I remember.
I did not know how to dress. I was trying I was still finding myself. I think these past 2 years are the 2 years to where I have like actually took time to find myself. I was trying to be someone I wasn't. I was running away from my family problems, like all this shit. And I'm just so happy. I probably wouldn't have been able to do that if that friend group wasn't as hands wide open, like come in, give a like opening to me. And they were so accepting of me. They were like, hey, we don't fucking know you, but like come party, like come the fuck on. And I never had that. I mean, so yeah.
No, they were pretty good about that. I mean, I showed up and had like not drank much or anything. Yeah. And then no one really pressured me much. And then I ended up, I think, like living out some party days, but like not hardcore, but like a little bit that I never had.
Oh yeah.
I had a little time of that.
My party was definitely different versus back at home to here because, partying with the gays, they'll get you to do some shit.
Which then, it really came full circle. We ended up with the gay party house.
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. That was a wild time. I was like, wow, I really went from where I was.
Yeah. Like if we had a yearbook, if we had a gay yearbook, you would be under like most changed probably. Like literally you went from like churchy, like probably wouldn't, if someone offered you a cigarette back then, you would be like, or even like a sip of alcohol, you would have been like, absolutely not. To where now it's like, hey, if you can put some grenadine in there, you got me. A little bit of Bacardi.
Man. Yeah. No, I don't even drink. I don't drink as much now as I did those few days, a little bit of time. But no, it was wild because I went from like all of that. And then I was like, I made it. I'm in East Nashville living with all the gays. And I was like,
full life.
Oh, man.
I mean, as much as like we went through.
I mean, it was still a good time.
Yeah.
Depends what we're talking about. For me, I think, I don't know. It was for the most part, it was good if I take out, like for me, maybe 70% of the time.
Yeah. Was it bad or good?
Good.
Okay. Yeah, I would say mine is probably an 85%. But also mentally, like both of us, that was a mental toll for both of us. But I think that it made us a lot. We gained a lot from all of that too. So overall though, I think anyone's coming out story is the same kind of dynamic. I know that a lot of parents at first they shut it down. They don't want to hear about it. They're like, especially for someone who did go through middle school and high school dating boys and then coming out and their mom being like, okay, yeah, that's funny because whenever you were head cheerleader and everything, like, I mean, kind of calling your daughter like boy crazy and shit, but how can you be into girls now? And that's where a lot of the parents that I have met, that's kind of where they didn't necessarily have any problems with me. It's just like, hey, this is hard for me to accept right now because the way that my daughter, like, pretty much if my daughter was gay, like, I would know. And it's like, okay, but also you don't know who they are and you don't know how long you cannot, like, someone can be struggling with coming out for so fucking long and no one can pressure them to like do that. And I'm glad that I had people in my life that were like, yeah, we did know. We were just waiting for you to tell me. Like, that means a lot to me because they didn't pressure me into me coming to them. And it made it a lot easier, even though it was a struggled time. I think it would have been a lot better if I had the support from my father. But overall, now where me and my dad are and my godparents are phenomenal. They don't have any issues. My dad, he won't make comments if like I were to bring someone around, but if behind closed doors, he'll say what he wants. And then my friends, you guys have always, but my friends even back in Illinois, they haven't had, there's some that they're like, we don't like her, but it's because they fucked me over, not because we're big lesbians together. So
big lesbians together.
Practicing lesbianism.
Oh man. I guess we could tie this into vulnerability a little bit before we go. Which I think for me is kind of simple to say. It just takes a lot of vulnerability to tell anyone.
Yeah.
That,
It's just hard. I mean, because you're having that constant battle with yourself. And then also sometimes, like, if you are figuring it out in a way, like, I just feel like in today's world, we're open to accepting, but also, and I don't mean every, elder person. I just think that the way people are and it's hard being vulnerable whenever you're coming out if the person you're coming out and being vulnerable to is not vulnerable and they just like shut it all down.
Yeah.
And they're not open to it. And I just feel like it's so bizarre to me to even have this conversation because I keep making like these faces of like, what the fuck? Because at the end of the day, like, it's no one's fucking business. You should do what you want to do. You should do what you please. And at the end of the day, I understand that it is your mom and your dad, but like, if they are making you question your worth and everything like that, like, take a step back and reflect and look in the mirror and know your worth. A parent making the situation a lot worse, like, luckily, I am very independent, I would say. If my father hadn't treated me the way that I was, then maybe like, and I'm not saying I would be a baby back bitch, but like maybe I'd be more sensitive than to what it is now. But it was never hard for me to be like, okay, listen, if you aren't going to love me for who I am, then fuck you. And some people would be like, oh my gosh, I would never say that to my dad. But it's like, all right, well, also, you didn't go through what I went through. And you can't tell me that you know how I feel because of what I went through because you didn't see the shit that went on behind closed doors. And that goes for anyone. No one knows that constant battle that you have even within yourself behind closed doors. And it's like, if they don't want to take the time to even understand it, because at the end of the day, they won't fully understand it. It is your own feeling. It is your own process. But if they don't take the time to get to know you there, even if this is your parents, then it's kind of like, find those people that will. And I did. Luckily, yeah. I did.
That truly is, that was a lot of it for me. And so my advice would be that as well, is if you kind of find those people for you like to hang out with and get to know, it makes it easier to accept yourself.
It does,
Because you're like, oh, there's plenty that are in this position.
Yeah. Well, that's how I was. I was like, oh man, I didn't realize that all these people like were kind of in the same boat. And I'm not saying they went through the same things as me or anything, but whenever you have those people and they're like, yeah, this is how my situation was and everything like that. And I mean, there are bright things to social media, and I feel like that is one of them. I feel like you can definitely find people to collab with and like have those talks with. And even though they are behind a screen, like they're genuine, or like FaceTiming them. And it does help. It does help whenever you have that person to kind of escape from reality from. And then you never know. Maybe you will fall in love with them and live happily ever after.
Oh boy, that's such a gay thing.
I know, that's kind of what I do. Well, I don't do that. I don't do my come out, but like I know
what you mean. I don't
think the love of my life is living in
overall, definitely try to find those people. And I think like one last like kind of joke I want to make to end on, to say that it gets better, is so to go back, it's like when I first discovered the show The L Word, I was watching it, like binge watching it like crazy. And it was like 2011 maybe when I was like deep into it. And I was on vacation with my parents in Florida. And I was like plugged into an Ethernet port to like date this for you. And I never really went to the beach. I was staying up till 4 a.m. watching The L Word. And this is pre-Netflix. So I'm like finding sketchy links for every episode and like, so I can watch it.
Yeah.
And I'm like set up with the screen facing the wall. So that way if my parents walk out of the room they had, like I had plenty of time to like change things around.
Off,
yeah. I went from that to, last weekend or Friday not Friday. Yeah, Friday you could watch the new episode of season 2 of L Word Gen Q.
Yeah.
And I was watching it in my own house with my girlfriend and the dog. And I was like,
yeah,
really came around. Came around. It does. Things do get better.
No, for sure.
It does.
For sure.
But yeah, I guess we'll wrap that up. And we hope that y'all got something out of this. And if you want to send us any topics that you want us to talk about, or have like a relationship question kind of thing, or whatever else, you can shoot it to us.
It would be a good time also with like coming out and everything if you need advice on how to.
Oh, yes, sure. Send us that. That would be good too, actually. And you can send that to us via a DM on Instagram through No Subject Apparel, or you can also email us at vulnerabilityisinpodcast@gmail.com. Until then, we will see you next week.
Stay true to you.
See ya.
Thanks, guys, for listening.
You can follow us over at No Subject Apparel on all social media.
You can discover us on YouTube.
And please like, subscribe, follow, and review us on whatever platform you're currently listening on.
New episodes will be dropped every Tuesday.
And you can sign up for our mailing list in the description of this episode to get a personal message from us and reminders for new episodes every week.